1 FSF Federation Switzerland Fibromyalgia University due 415/12/2005. Professor Dr. Christian Daniela Sound. Fibromyalgia does not have to date a known and demonstrable etiology. The fibromyalgia or SPID syndrome diffuse idiopathic polyalgic by its symptomatic medical definition for information only imperfectly on the nature of pathological events experienced by patients. It is true, no antigenic marker specific or systemic biological examination to determine demonstrable scientific and medical way whether a patient is suffering from this syndrome. Some prefer the term mentioned state rather than the words disease or pathology because these specific clinical denominations are not suitable for eyes and felt the people affected by these phenomena. Indeed, it's important for patients is not to be codified in a therapeutic or medical scheme, but to benefit from different practical solutions, original or natural or alternative. They also want medical or therapeutic solutions that can represent hope, because neuroleptic medications or anti-inflammatory medications have degrees of response and comfort that are limited in time and arguably magnitude, especially when temporary improvements associated some drug side effects. Fibromyalgia patients and could also draw its hopes in biochemical natural mechanisms because these are the very people who are disturbed, elementary to discovery. 2. One wonders if it is about a recessive appearance of latent autoimmune disease, a genetic disease spreads, or even a simple metabolic defect or a defect of unknown protein synthesis at the moment. Protein synthesis product all of our proteins, approximately 30,000. These proteins are completely responsible for the operation of our entire biology among other related functions that are related to nerve tissue, the mesenchyme, to filters, excretory, the filtration mechanisms, storage of energy commodities and also their transformations all levels, so that cell tissues including bone. Of course, any protein synthesis is linked to our genetic by the donor levels of our biology, namely our DNA. In our opinion, and based on observations of analytical records, electrolytes examinations, basic macronutrients and micronutrients, the fibromyalgia state is atypical in malfunction of the terminal tissue and nerve structures. It should not give too much medical and scientific final credit to the irreversible neurodegenerative hypothesis of fibromyalgia syndrome because certain systemic medications have benefactors effects on symptoms of pain. I refer in particular to drugs containing anti-inflammatory. It is quite possible that triggers chronic fatigue and debilitating pain may be related to the combination of different situations, psychological, sociological, biological and bioenvironmental, pollution of all kinds, such as dioxins, furans, pesticides, heavy and toxic metals that are contained in our food and in the environment. Indeed, our vital balance oscillates between acidity and alkalinity with a 7.39 maximum blood pH is a reflection of the homeostasis of electrolytes. Our land is a reflection of this phenomenon, is actually a case of water, where hydrogen atoms or protons, H+, balance the other part of the water molecule O, hydroxyl radical, O. This balance quality and quantity depends on the content of electrolytes contained in our body fluids and therefore major elements or macronutrients such as sodium, potassium, magnesium, calcium, and phosphorus, which are associated with water molecules. The momentary deficiency or deficiency of one of them can cause vital organ dysfunctions. I think in particular of cardiac dysfunctions, liver, kidney, or of our entire digestive system. This consequently can disrupt the metabolism of essential sugars and thus the energy allows the proper functioning of the muscles. Indeed, a lack of muscle metabolism leads logically mechanisms diffuse or intense pain and struggle compensation reflex mechanisms create severe fatigue syndromes. 3. Electrolyte imbalance creates suffering at many levels of the biology of fibromyalgia. The mechanisms associated with disruption of the pH and the increasingly important silent presence of visible and invisible pollutants, I think again to dioxins and heavy metals in particular, cause damage in filters and excretory, liver, kidneys, lungs, the digestive tract. This disrupts de facto energy mechanisms but also tissue and nervous mechanisms. It's therefore a multifactorial combination of causes we believe the fibromyalgia condition. In this state, all the mechanisms of production of hormones and their precursors are disrupted, as well as the large central natural detoxification that are the liver, pancreas and adrenal glands. Brain tissue is also achieved by heavy and toxic metals, including mercury or mercury compounds such as methyl mercury. But the brain is also affected by dioxins that cause irreversible damage in our DNA, even if our DNA has a certain power of self-healing. Dioxins cause considerable damage. They not only affect the development of sperm, called spermatogenesis, but they also cause cell mutations and prevent cell division. But dioxins are mostly very carcinogenic. There are these toxic molecules, dozens of chemical forms. Dioxins are produced in industrial activities, but mainly by domestic waste incinerators. They act in the depths of our cells and tissues, and unfortunately we cannot currently detect the individual plan. Thus, solutions of fibromyalgia equation are searching in understanding simple metabolisms, in the study of electrolytes present in our biology, but also those made by a preferably healthy diet, because let us not forget that food is our first natural drug. There are these toxic molecules, dozens of chemical forms. Dioxins are produced industrial activities, but mainly by domestic waste incinerators. They act in the depths of our cells and tissues, and unfortunately we cannot currently detect the individual plan. Thus, solutions of fibromyalgia equation are searching in understanding simple metabolisms, in the study of electrolytes present in our biology, but also those made by a preferably healthy diet, because let us not forget that food is our first natural drug. There are these toxic molecules, dozens of chemical forms. Dioxins are produced industrial activities, but mainly by domestic waste incinerators. They act in the depths of our cells and tissues, and unfortunately we cannot currently detect the individual plan. Thus, solutions of fibromyalgia equation are searching in understanding simple metabolisms, in the study of electrolytes present in our biology, but also those made by a preferably healthy diet, because let us not forget that food is our first natural drug. 4. It seems obvious, trivial, and logical that our basic foods is, our food, the air we breathe and water, are suitably devoid of toxic agents and xenobiotics such as heavy and toxic metals, dioxins, furans, and pesticides, and other chemical derivatives, and aromatic solvents. But there are other aspects that may be considered in fibromyalgia. First, talk about the metabolism of food. In fact, food is the first contribution of raw materials essential to our functioning. We will not develop in the approach to this dietary justification conference this or that regime might be best suited to fibromyalgia. We only stay in a specific area of conventional nutritional intake in Europe. This spring that in the absence of diabetic pathology, a rich and sufficient power should be appropriate to fibromyalgia. This feed may contain permitted additives. You can select additives within any food and therefore choose the best foods in natural categories or biological quality. In fibromyalgia, it is important to consider the renal system. The hepatorenal system is a necessary torque to the proper functioning of our body. Vital functions associated with them range from genetics to filtration, from simple to more complex, e.g. protein synthesis. The liver is the second floor of an essential metabolic building. It is associated with pancreatic, third floor, essential for the biodegradation of organic sugars. The liver metabolizes essential substances such as proteins and the urea CO, NH2, which originates from the catabolism, the degradation of amino acids which contain the chemical radicals NH2, amines, and COOH, carboxylic acid. But the liver is also involved in the metabolism of fats or fat, transforms lipid lipoprotein and manufactures cholesterol. Finally, the liver is involved in the metabolism of sugars or carbs and develops glucose from carbohydrates. This process is known as the gluconeogenesis. Also, it stores glucose in a polymeric form called glycogen. What is important to remember that our liver plays a key role in the liver metabolizes essential substances such as proteins and the urea CO, NH2, which originates from the catabolism, the degradation of amino acids which contain the chemical radicals NH2, amines, and COOH, carboxylic acid. But the liver is also involved in the metabolism of fats or fat, transforms lipid lipoprotein and manufactures cholesterol. Finally, the liver is involved in the metabolism of sugars or carbs and develops glucose from carbohydrates. This process is known as the gluconeogenesis. Also, it stores glucose in a polymeric form called glycogen. What is important to remember that our liver plays a key role in the liver metabolizes essential substances such as proteins and the urea CO, NH2, which originates from the catabolism, the degradation of amino acids which contain the chemical radicals NH2, amines, and COOH, carboxylic acid. But the liver is also involved in the metabolism of fats or fat, transforms lipid lipoprotein and manufactures cholesterol. Finally, the liver is involved in the metabolism of sugars or carbs and develops glucose from carbohydrates. This process is known as the gluconeogenesis. Also, it stores glucose in a polymeric form called glycogen. What is important to remember that our liver plays a key role in, but the liver is also involved in the metabolism of fat and fats, transforms lipid lipoprotein and manufactures cholesterol. Finally, the liver is involved in the metabolism of sugars or carbs and develops glucose from carbohydrates. This process is known as the gluconeogenesis. Also, it stores glucose in a polymeric form called glycogen. What is important to remember that our liver plays a key role in, but the liver is also involved in the metabolism of fats or fat, transforms lipid lipoprotein and manufactures cholesterol. Finally, the liver is involved in the metabolism of sugars or carbs and develops glucose from carbohydrates. This process is known as the gluconeogenesis. Also, it stores glucose in a polymeric form called glycogen. What is important to remember that our liver plays a key role in detoxification of adverse drug substances and which is called iatrogenic, but also by the presence of natural mercaptan, thiol, hydrogen sulfur, and also zinc in organic form. 5. Liver chelate or eliminates toxic heavy metals, and in a very time-consuming process, toxic substances are removed by the hepatic blood flow. Hepatocytes or liver cells are sorting out toxic agents and substances that are useful to our metabolism. For all these tasks, we can say that the liver has a natural defense power or immune in the body because the toxic undermine the effectiveness of our natural defenses, especially in terms of bacterial attacks. Specialized cells called Kupffer cells will intervene and engulf foreign colloidal particles in active and circulating pathogenic bacteria. The liver also has an endocrine role is complemented by vitamin storage mission lives. B12 or cobalamin, and which contains an atom of cobalt at its center, as the insulin contains a zinc atom. Here the liver works on the pancreas. Other substances such as glutathione peroxidase, which is a biodegradation catabolic enzyme containing selenium, Se, and certain amino acids, H and lipoid, play important roles in metabolic terms of protection of erythrocytic mechanisms, cells. It is important to note that hepatic mechanisms involved in the protection of our biological integrity and to our health. Among the cofactors of what the molecular pathologies can be called, we can say, as demonstrated in numerous studies, universities and research centers in the world, as oxidative stress including free radicals develop phenomena peroxidation. That is what it is, that a peroxidation? It is a phenomenon that blocks many organic peroxide chains and the water molecule to turn it into hydrogen peroxide or hydrogen peroxide, H2O2. The liver, to degrade compounds that are peroxide, will use an enzyme called glutathione peroxidase. This enzyme participates naturally biodegradation peroxygen. For example, peroxide compounds which block or inhibit reversibly or irreversibly receptor sites of enzymes, coenzymes, and substrates, especially dysmetalloproteins, block the activity. It should be noted that metalloproteins are needed as biological catalysts, that there are at least metalloproteins involved in our genetics and protein engineering. 6. These enzymes associated with known or rare metals and metalloid, regulate the ballet of organic life that involves 30,000 protein. These indispensable catalyst assemblies are involved in co-risk factors for triggering the symptoms of fibromyalgia. Studies on urinary excretions of fibromyalgia indicate that the scales of the major electrolytes, that is to say, sodium, Na, potassium, K, magnesium, Mg, calcium, Ca, phosphorus, P, are still disturbed, but also important elements such as zinc or molybdenum. The urinary image may be a reflection of the molecular disorder and thus catalytic or EMS, enzyme, metal, substrate. It is interesting to note that urinary picture of fibromyalgia is much like autism. We perform routine urine analysis with autistic associations. We work in Spain. At the autistic, there is an electrochemical balance of sodium and potassium disrupted, but poor in calcium and magnesium depletion, calcium and magnesium leaks. Loss of phosphorus, P, also seems always important. Note that phosphorus depletion indicate that the ATP-Mg energetic material, adenosine triphosphate Mg, AMP-Mg, ADP-Mg may be depressed, and an imbalance of these electroprotein scales membranes can lead to hyperexcitability or its opposite, atony, problem associated with magnesium. The way to search for heavy and toxic metals is also part of the lines of investigation privileged by several laboratories including ours, but also the presence of dioxins in biological fluids, the program we are undertaking now. In conclusion, oxidative stress could take its sources in the silent bioenvironmental contamination via dioxins, furans, pesticides, industrial solvents, and heavy and toxic metals. The other possibilities are genetic vulnerability to attackers, which itself would be transmitted by parental or genetic pathway, or by silent accumulation of toxins. The inequality in genetic diseases could be due to the toxic accumulation, which is in most cases dose-dependent and who one day exceeds the permissible threshold. It is true that there are also the hypersensibilities to toxic agents of all kinds, but they do not necessarily lead to chronic or long-lasting illnesses. These developments cannot be covered in this presentation due to time constraints. 7. Among the molecular lesions or oxidative stress, as we can see in a vital organ such as the liver, we will appeal to a particular catabolic enzyme, that is cytochrome P450, and participating in the indirect creation of free radicals are oxygen-causing peroxidation we have already mentioned above. It has been shown that glutathione peroxidase associated with cysteine is an essential amino acid effectively fight against the production of free radicals. Look now, what are the consequences of organic disorder, when the liver cannot properly perform its function of detoxification due to inhibitors such as heavy and toxic metals, hormones, chemicals, dioxins, furans, pesticides, solvents, etc. Inflammatory situation creates and transmits toxic byproducts which, in turn, will increase the oxidative stress. This oxidative stress can lead to cancer and degenerative conditions. It appears that oxidative stress obey the same law pharmaco than that associated with side effects of certain medications, namely the dose dependency. It is to say that side effects disappear or decrease depending on the dose. One could speak of oxidative stress pressure in the biological material. Beyond, the inflammatory process can create reversible or irreversible damage in biological systems, but the self-repair of our vital systems, including our DNA, lets notable open toward hope, especially for the development of simple substances devoid of side effects and control of the field of fibromyalgia. What are the answers to the fibromyalgia? What are the solutions, products, methods? The first approach is the analytically, what is called an ionogram, MAU. In our opinion and experience on tens of thousands of urinalysis targeting various diseases and or syndromes, it is clear that a balanced field in terms of its secondary major electrolytes and trace elements cannot present a severely disrupted biology, and that ionograms or metallograms atomic urinary for patients with a specific clinical picture and listed, are still disturbed. The methods. The first approach is the analytically, what is called an ionogram, MAU. In our opinion and experience on tens of thousands of urinalysis targeting various diseases and or syndromes, it is clear that a balanced field in terms of its secondary major electrolytes and trace elements cannot present a severely disrupted biology, and that ionograms or metallograms atomic urinary for patients with a specific clinical picture and listed, are still disturbed by the methods. The first approach is the analytically, what is called an ionogram, MAU. In our opinion and experience on tens of thousands of urinalysis targeting various diseases and/or syndromes, it is clear that a balanced field in terms of its secondary major electrolytes and trace elements cannot present a severely disrupted biology, and that ionograms or metallograms atomic urinary for patients with a specific clinical picture and listed, are still disturbed, either moderately or significantly. 8. Why? It has been shown that imbalances of electrolytes are always directly proportional to the bioclinical state of the patient. Good knowledge of the field in terms of electrolytes is essential to assess the action of supplementation, but also control the drug action. It is therefore extremely important, first, to ensure supplementation or balancing electrolytes if it's proved that the land is unbalanced. Mineral supplementation, following urinary ionograms or MAU, to correct the electrochemical balance sodium, potassium, calcium, magnesium, phosphorus. We have recently developed an interesting and promising complex averagely proportioned we call basic mix glycan. This complex is composed of electrolyte salts suitable for a good recovery pH that was disturbed, but also compensating passengers' imbalances of the major electrolytes. This complex is a balanced mineral nutritional supplement and also includes some essential trace elements such as manganese or zinc, which participates in the activity of over 200 metalloenzymes. Rebalancing electrolytic pools will contribute significantly to the overall comfort of fibromyalgia, because it will tone the land and protect it. Then we recommend supplementation, also called phytonutrients detoxification of site of hepatorenal system. There are many natural substances that phytochemistry is very interesting and which contribute to detoxification. I think in particular the following nutrients: isothiocyanates contained in cruciferous vegetables, broccoli; glucosinolates, which are also found in cruciferous vegetables; organosulfur compounds, thiol, such as onion, garlic; monoterpenes, flavonoids, other. D-supplementation are important and significantly improve the condition of fibromyalgia. This is our supplementation: acids, vitamins, and enzymes. An extensive list can be established here. We deliver a few well-known examples. Polyunsaturated fatty acids W3, the whole series of lives. Coenzyme Q10B on the tryptophan. An extensive list can be established here. We deliver a few well-known examples. Polyunsaturated fatty acids W3, coenzyme Q10B on the tryptophan. 9. Glutathione, L-cysteine, etc. It was found that often ionograms fibromyalgia content heavy metals and toxic. So there are logical explanations to the toxic heavy metal depletion in the urine of fibromyalgia. Notable inflammatory conditions such as the case with fibromyalgia, greatly promote migration and urinary excretion of heavy metals and toxic metalloid. Indeed, inflammation physically chelate toxic elements that have been trapped in the liver and kidney parenchyma. Thus, we find the heavy metals in the depletion or urinary excretion, which involves no toxicological major risk, but simply a removal of the medium of these same toxic is a situation contrary to risk. It is therefore important to detect in questionnaires that are given to patients at the time of interpretation toxic positions ionograms that a simple flu-like illness can cause heavy and toxic metals eliminations. I will now talk about dequalations methods of heavy metals and toxic metalloids. First, there are chemotherapies composed by strong organic acids such as EDTA and mercaptans DMSO-DMSAASD. These chelator agents are generally used in emergencies to poisoning and toxic heavy metals, if you have been the victim of severe mercury poisoning or lead. There are many side effects associated with these substances, including depression and deterioration of zinc and molybdenum pool and other interesting elements as co-protectors of immunity such as boron and the lanthanides, series of 14 natural elements, lanthanum to lutetium. Some doctors, especially in the USA or Belgium, use these aggressive methods for chelation, but most of them use a urinary analytical monitoring to assess the secondary depletion to avoid depletion of the pool of zinc and molybdenum among others, but also to know what are the quantities of heavy and toxic metals that are eliminated during each chemotherapy. Thus one can stop or moderate the chelation treatment in time. 10. These are routine checks on chelation protocols that allow us to speak knowingly. There is much talk of chelation natural method known by many people now. There are some substances related to the plant kingdom, such as garlic, chlorella, some fungi, and even some algae. Regarding the algae, must make reservations for the presence sometimes limit of heavy and toxic metals in these substances. In fact, since they trap heavy and toxic metals in their natural operation, if the marine environment is polluted by metals heavy and toxic, they will also be contaminated. We use analytical tools, atomic mass spectrometry (ICP-MS), and are considerably sensitive and can detect very low toxic levels in biological fluids. Parts per billion and parts per trillion. Our laboratory has developed the chelator protocol that uses ZnFlNT4 product and nanozeolite, which will be released soon. ZnFlNT4 product, an organometallic we developed since 2003, is composed of a zinc atom complexed electrochemically to one molecule of fructose. He's proved that this natural combination is particularly effective action in chelation of heavy and toxic metals. At the same time, the ZnFlNT4 consolidates good value zinc pool, which is considerably significant biologically. Our method causes no side effect and allows gentle way to avoid zinc deficiency states, and also protect the endocrine parenchyma and immunity. The duration of treatment is always directly proportional to the amount of toxic metals and to eliminate. In the proposed chelation process, it is advisable not absorb plant substances rich in phytates, which can in turn useful chelating metals such as ZnFlNT4. Phytates are proteins that are found in some foods such as artichokes, leeks, and celery. In the proposed chelation process, it is advisable not absorb plant substances rich in phytates, which can in turn useful chelating metals such as ZnFlNT4. Phytates are proteins that are found in some foods such as artichokes, leeks, and celery. In the proposed chelation process, it is advisable not absorb plant substances rich in phytates, which can in turn useful chelating metals such as ZnFlNT4. Phytates are proteins that are found in some foods such as artichokes, leeks, and celery. 11. There is also the dioxin contamination of our knowledge. There are no natural methods known biological or vegetable that can neutralize and transform these chemicals PCBs that contain chlorine associated with aliphatic or aromatic molecules, because this neutralization chemistry does not exist in industrial chemistry. The very serious problem that industries and municipalities encounter when they use of conventional incineration methods to destroy the waste from our domestic consumption. For information, EU legislation has determined a maximum limit of 4 nanograms/meters squared. Note that some incinerators produce up to 100 times the limit standard. As NIA currently no industrial method of neutralization, alternatives are very limited, either incinerated or are piled waste, hoping that in the next 10 years, the appropriate method will be found. In front of this silent and deadly scourge for our biological heritage, we decided with industrial partners, to actively seek solutions since 2003, both technological and therapeutic, the elimination of dioxins in the liquid, fat and tissue. Our first mission will be in 2006 in Geneva to analyze dioxins in biological materials, that is to say, tissue, bones, fat, urine, blood, semen, hair, with very expensive equipment and so sophisticated. Parallel to this important work, we also move forward satisfactorily towards the development of therapeutic molecules that allow to eliminate exogenous dioxins. To conclude, I would like to stress that fibromyalgia, as for other rare syndromes, is not a curse. It represents an additional challenge in biology and biochemistry. There are ways and methods to everyone that will help to relieve and cheaply. In addition, your cooperation will better understand the mechanisms to discover, associated with signs of fibromyalgia, but also to better understand the action of dioxins and heavy and toxic metals in triggering fibromyalgia symptoms. I would note that fibromyalgia, as for other rare syndromes, is not a curse. It represents an additional challenge in biology and biochemistry. There are ways and methods to everyone that will help to relieve and cheaply. In addition, your cooperation will better understand the mechanisms to discover, associated with signs of fibromyalgia, but also to better understand the action of dioxins and heavy and toxic metals in triggering fibromyalgia symptoms. End of the conference. Contact us at Glycan Industries LLC at glycangroup.com.